Hi, welcome to the session today on change management, where we are going to be specifically focusing on the agile part. Let me defigure it for you. Change management overall is the composite nature of the evolving the product, the technology, the user management, which is going to graduate all the way from design to build to test and to deploy, right? So in the overall value chain of a change management, we have this kind of sessions where we intend to graduate professionals into the change management fold via three different modules. Business analysis, which makes them capable to take the right requirements from the set of stakeholders. Step 2, the same requirements now need to be implemented typically in a software development lifecycle, where a very unique kind of methodology, Agile, and the most popular among them is Scrum, which has caught the fancy of the market since last about 4-5 years. But it's now that it's really gaining ground for last 2 years, which means 40% of software development lifecycle has already shifted from Waterfall into Agile. This means the market needs Agile professionals, which means they need to be conversed with these kind of methodologies, which makes them very responsive, very adaptable, and which helps to really cut down on effort and optimize the cost of our software development. Hence, here comes the Scrum Master. This session today wants to explode what is the key difference between the traditional way of software development and the new way of software development. This is something which is covering probably billions of dollars of market today in the world, and hence a familiarity with this concept obviously gives its own dividends. Alright, traditional waterfall for probably last maybe 4 to 5 decades, we had software development lifecycle happening in phases, fixed watertight compartments. We do the designing, then we shift to writing technical specifications or design architectures, we shift to coding, we shift to testing, etc. Each box is independent of each other. So till the time one full formal cycle of design doesn't happen, we do not shift to the next box, which is caring for the design architecture, the specification writing, etc. Now here's the game. If in case there's a error which comes into one first phase, it will translate into the second and succeeding phases as well, which means the error and the risk is likely to cascade because there's no check. Here, the problem in traditional waterfall is that we have huge chunks of work which is not broken down into smaller increment cycles, and the whole gigantic mass of things keeps moving. We dismantle that. We bring the new agile principles where a continuous delivery of changes happens, but the changes which are broken down into smaller and smaller design sets, which means it's easier to configure them, it's easier to code them, it's easier to test them, it's easier to deploy them. Is it probably just a small trick in which we broke down a large requirement into smaller requirements and then we kept going on ahead? It's not like that only. Agile principle focuses more on a value-driven thing. So if this was a performance, if this was about efficiency and success, this is purely about how to we give more value to business. It's this centricity of this model, which is so uniquely it connects it to a business value, is something which really bridges the gap between IT and business. That's just the start of why this one is really good over the other one. Now, here in this model, the ongoing collaboration between IT and business is way higher than this, which was just about a watertight compartments, like a black hole where there are some people sitting in a capsule working out, and only when they complete their deliverables they come out and they hand it over with a formal handover to the next phase of people, and that's about it. Yeah, so cut to cut, no cut to cut, ongoing collaboration at every stage, during design, during development, during testing, during deployment. It's somewhere where we have a concept of minimal viable product, a contradiction obviously to the traditional methods where we want the whole project fully developed. So either it's going to be a black or it's going to be a white. If it's white, this means it came out successful, we are great. But the fact is, when worldwide for a couple of decades we kept watching that 50 to 60% of projects do have grave errors, they do not really map to the right requirements, and hence the functionality which is developed and passed on to the user doesn't come up to its satisfaction in any case, and then we knew that there was something wrong here. Hence the concept of MVP, minimal viable product. Here, there's an increasing value which we give over a period of time, which means that the value driven plan over initial list of requirements, so as soon as it catches the first spark of requirements, it immediately tends to cascade into more and more proliferation of those requirements, which keep getting translated into larger developments and testings, but every line item is on a small level. Let me explain a little more. This is Waterfall for you, a standard pyramid, which is a typical project which has a timeline, it has a cost, and it has scope. So this is a very plan driven thing. We flip it over and then we say, hey, the vision now will create the features and the estimates. So this one is either value or vision driven. This is plan driven. I appreciate the plan. I love planning. But the fact is, if I'm able to rather get my footprint on the value and the vision part, it's obvious that the features developed in those projects will be way better, and that eventually will obviously optimize the cost and the timeline as well. Whereas here, I'm just highly dependent on a large kind of a project plan which can either land me in heaven or in hell. And that's where in Waterfall we say the plan creates cost and schedules. In Agile, the vision creates the features and estimates, right? All right. Concept of Agile: self-organized, highly specialized, cross-functional, highly adaptable teams. All right. We have a fair amount of participation here from the business as well, which means if we're going to work hard and smart that way, we would need a client representation to be in as well. And a representation who knows business, who's been there for a couple of years, who knows the processes, who knows his own SMEs within the client organization. That's where Agile leverages a lot on the business mindset as well. So if a client gives us a product owner, who leads a set of users, users bring their requirements in form of user stories, product owner collates them and then articulates it to the business analyst and the rest of the IT teams, who then further understand that what we really need to create and how and why. So here, primarily 3 full stages: project preparations, where we create the initial stakeholder engagement, define the way of working. Then is the solution validation, where high level requirements are gathered and they are committed to a certain sprints. So what's a sprint? So if I say, hey, I challenge you to come with me and run a sprint of 100 meters. It's a fast action prone kind of a dash. We do our best to outstrip each other. We put in every ounce of energy and strength and flexibility and responsiveness that we may have. Same is the concept in Agile. We create small sprints of 2 weeks. So some set of requirements which come from the user, we articulate them into requirements, and then we decide that we will run them into smaller sprints. 2 weeks for a few sets of requirements. Requirements are small and optimal in size, and hence the team is able to achieve them in 2 weeks, including design, testing and coding and deployments, because don't forget we have a cross-functional team which are highly specialized into it as well. Plus, so that the business impediments do not arise, they always have a product owner sitting next to them along with a set of users who are able to remove those ambiguities, if any, so that the IT team keeps proceeding on its sharp cycle. Alright, so Agile is defined into short sprints. So every cycle could have probably 4 to 5 sprints or 2 weeks each. This means typically it's like a 10-week program, and we club these sprints into something called a Scrum. So Scrum is the larger umbrella which will have 5 multiple sprints. Each sprint will have a defined requirements which need to be executed. So here what we do is that before we start the sprint, we have something called sprint 0, and that's called sprint planning, where we gather all our user stories, which are by default nothing but requirements, we prioritize them in sync with business so that the continued evolution of requirements always results in the highest set of prioritized requirements which the business needs ASAP, and that is what we put into our sprint planning, then which is further divided into the multiple sprints lined up ahead, bunched up into a scrum, and that's what we call a sprint iteration. Yeah. Think about it. This looks cool if you're all sitting together in the same room, in the same city, in the same center. What if this is being done by multiple teams which are spread across different geographies, across different cultures, across different work practices, across different time zones? Is Agile successful there as well? The answer is an emphatic yes. So Agile has been able to evolve itself to something called distributed Agile, where there could be multiplicity of teams, but all remain in constant sync with each other and hence able to overlap, collude and collaborate so well that this model works even if it cascades across the global geography. Yeah. And of course, needless to say, they could be so highly in touch with each other using specific audio and video rooms where they can sync, align and communicate what translates into a best common harmony within the team. So this is a short presentation which we wanted to bring forward in order to describe that how market is evolving into much newer concepts. I don't know whether I want to call it a new generation concept because it's already been in the market for a couple of years, but the fact is it's gaining grounds and maturity. And now if I tell you 40% of the projects have already shifted from Waterfall into Agile. So the market needs those Agile coaches, those Agile mentors, those Scrum masters which can align, keep the vision together and help the software development life cycle to fast forward by at least 40% of expedite speed, which translates into value for business. That's Agile for you. Thank you for attending this session.